What do we do Tuesday?
I just lectured.
It's like a chiropractic office.
So you should make sure that you go over.
And they don't.
Okay,
I
let's get started.
And they say it's for an hour, but it's like for 30 minutes. 'Cause you go in there, you have to have your clothes and stuff.
All right, where did we end?
They take like 15 minutes to get it.
We started with the,
And if I look at like 15 minutes early to get
and I am recording today, by the way. Did we get to this slide though? We were Benjamin Franklin, weren't we?
Yes.
Okay,
So we went fast.
let's get through this. I'll let y'all work on that assignment for today. Here. Oh, it's back. Okay, so we talked about bifocals. We talked about what bifocals are today, right? I think at that period of time, his bifocals were the ones that had like the, you know what I'm talking about? The glasses that you like lifted up and stuff. He also found that colds can be passed from person to person, that they're contagious, which we know that seems pretty obvious at this point. Leonardo da Vinci, he was the one who did the drawing of, I think it's called the Veruvian Man.
The guy.
Yes. You know what drawing I'm talking about?
I mean, the guy looks like another person. It's pretty cool.
Oh, Vitruvian. I'm sorry, I always say it wrong. This picture, have you ever seen that picture before? Probably seen it on, like, drawn somewhere. And it's got the circle around it.
It's on very hard.
Anyways, I think that was his. Yeah, it was. Anyway, so that's one thing that was significant. Not that particular drawing was significant, but just anatomy of the body as a whole was significant because, hold on, where's my little? There we go. Because of the, now we're fixed. Because people didn't know a lot about the body yet. They didn't know what the inside of the body looked, you know, how it looked. And up till this point, and even some during this time, you know, it was still very like taboo to touch dead people or mess with dead people and to figure out the anatomy. So, you know, it was a big deal. Robert Hooke built one of the very first reflecting microscopes. And I think there is one of these microscopes in that closet where Mr. Selman's room is, you know, almost on that table or on that cart with all the microscopes. It's got a mirror at the bottom, and that's what they use, that reflecting microscope. They use mirror to light through so that you could see that the object or whatever. Gabriel Fahrenheit, that word sounds familiar, right? So created the first mercury thermometer. Do you know what a mercury thermometer is? Those are the kind that your family might have used them when you were little that you had to shake, you know, and they have a little silver bubble on the end. You know what I'm talking about? Mm-hmm. Essence, you know what I'm talking about? I think I have one back here. No, dude, I cannot stand to use them because they take you have to wait 3 minutes. You have to leave it in your mouth for 3 minutes. These kind.
Oh, okay.
You have to wait 3 minutes to get an accurate reading. It's forever to hold that in your mouth. Notice what's happened to the average lifespan. Way up, jumped way up during this time period. There were so many more inventions and so much more understanding of how the body worked and how that was related to disease. Edward Jenner developed a vaccine for smallpox, which was very significant because smallpox was a big problem and a lot of people died from it. Any ideas on how, did we get to that part in the video?
Yeah.
Oh, so how did he come up with it?
Like, he like gave them the cowpox first, and then like that.
Yes, so in his observations, he noticed that the milkmaids never got smallpox. And so he figured out that the cowpox is really, really closely related to smallpox. And so because these milkmaids had already contracted cowpox, it made it where that their body had already built up antibody. That's one of the things, vaccines work, this is how they work. They expose your body to a little bit of the disease or the virus or whatever it is that's causing a problem. Usually it's a dead one, so it doesn't cause symptoms and things like that. But your body then attacks it. Well, when your body attacks it, your white blood cells, your immune system, it creates what's called antibodies. And these antibodies are specially shaped, if you will, or specially formulated so that they will always attack like that smallpox virus or that cowpox virus or whatever. Well, because those two were so similar, the milkmaids had already created antibodies that would also react to smallpox. So when their body was exposed to smallpox, it just attacked it right then, and they never got sick. That's the same way vaccines work for you. So if you get the flu shot, if you're exposed to that particular strain of flu, then your body has already responded to that vaccine. So it can easily and really quickly respond then to that flu virus whenever you get exposed to it. Does that make sense? So that's how vaccines work. That's why we get them. That's also why the flu vaccine doesn't always work, because there's different strains of flus. Every year they try to, the immunization is for what they expect to be the most common type of flu for that year. But there's so many flu viruses and strains that sometimes they get it right, sometimes they get it wrong. Sometimes you're exposed to a type of flu that the vaccine wasn't even good for. So that's why sometimes you still get it. But that's how they figured out how vaccines could work. They figured out that if you were exposed to it and your body had already fought against it, that you wouldn't get it later on. Now colds, there's all kinds of different strains of colds. That's one of the reasons why you keep getting colds. It's pretty crazy, isn't it? Can you imagine being that first person that he gave a shot of cowpox, that he made him sick, so that they could not get smallpox on it?
And then letting him inject you with smallpox.
Yeah.
Too.
Yeah.
Like they did that to a little boy.
I wonder if they did it to kids, just because kids tend to be a little more resilient, than adults. So I don't know. Renee Laennec invented the first stethoscope. Everybody knows what a stethoscope is, right? That's what you put in your ears to listen to your heart. Okay, first one was made of wood. And it looked, this one, you can kind of see this picture, it's really dark up here, but I used a fetoscope, which is where you can listen to the baby, like you listen to the baby's heartbeat in the mother's womb when I was in Ethiopia. Because I don't know if our Doppler was out that day or whatever, the thing that we normally listen to it with. But anyways, and it had this kind of like a bell on one end, and then it just looked kind of like a little trumpet or something. It was shaped kind of like a cone up to a smaller end. You just put your ear up to the smaller end and put that on the mom's belly. And it's similar to how this would work. I never could hear anything with it, but okay, the 19th century. So anytime you hear that word 19th century, we're talking about the 1800s. Rapid advancements, because they figured out that microorganisms is what's causing disease, because they found that microscope. Anesthesia. What is anesthesia?
Something that makes you
not be able to feel. Anna, anytime you see the word an or Anna at the beginning of a word, that means not. Anesthesia means feeling or sensation. So the literal meaning is not feeling or not sensing. Hey, that's what anesthesia does. Makes sense, right? So, Can you believe though? Think about all the surgeries we've been talking about that people have already been doing. Cutting into people's skulls, amputations, cataracts, what else? Blood, I mean, who knows, you know? And here, we just now has anesthesia been invented. Did y'all see that part on the video?
Yeah, we got
It was
the
It was like a gas.
Yes, and they had all those people around watching the surgery, and of course that wasn't very regulated. When you think about it, you just put that medicine on there and put it up to their nose. You know, these days anesthesiologists are some of like the most sued, I guess, doctors in practice, and so they have their liability insurance is really high because you know anesthesia is something that's kind of scary. You know, you put people to sleep and they should wake back up, but
They use like chloroform, and that's what, you know, like,
they don't use that anymore.
But-
wasn't it?
but they
wasn't
did
it, like
use them, they
they used
didn't
chloroform and alcohol or
I don't
something to make
know.
ester thing.
I don't know, I'll have to look at
and they
that.
didn't die.
Yeah, potentially.
But that's, like, I was thinking that Casey Anthony, that's what she killed her little girl. Like, she put chloroform to knock her out, and it killed her. So how did it not kill them? You know?
Well, she probably
that
used
is
a lot
probably
higher
trial
dose, and
and
that was a
error.
little girl too.
Kids are a lot different than adults. I mean, doing medicine and stuff, but well, I don't. But yeah, I mean, back then too, a lot of it was trial and error, like figuring out how much they could handle and whatnot. I mean, a lot of people would have died during the surgery, you know. But I don't know. Infection and vaccinations, like we said. Infection control developed once they figured out that microorganisms were the cause of disease. Then they could figure out how do we keep this from spreading? What do we need to do? You know, whatever. Formal training for nurses began. So they started actually having schools where they could train nurses. Women became active participants in healthcare. Up to this point, there really was no place for women in healthcare. Lifespan, again, is going up, so getting better. Elizabeth Blackwell was the first female physician. I bet she had a rough go. Florence Nightingale
I've heard of her.
is, she's known as the founder of modern nursing. So we learned a lot about her when I was in school. She established sufficient sense and sanitary nursing units during the Crimean War. And what this was a new thing. So she did just some very basic things during this war in their hospitals, like the wartime hospitals, that made a huge impact. She actually, where's my notes? I didn't write it down. I need to research that in a minute, but shoot. I'll find it in a minute. But anyways, drastically reduced the death rate during that wartime. And one of the things she did was she separated the people who were sick in the hospital from the people who were like injured sick, if that makes sense. So that, you had the people with illness and disease not getting the other people who weren't in there for illness or disease sick. The other thing she did was wash your hands. Okay? Up till this point, there was a need. People didn't realize that not washing your hands between people could make it spread disease and could get them more sick. She cleaned their wounds. It seems like that would have been something people did all the time, changed dressings and everything. But no, so that was another thing that she did. So really became kind of defined really what nursing could be, and was very significant in that one. Let's see if I can find real quick. I want to read you guys that. It's really interesting.
What's the call bell system?
I guess that's like, so people could ring them if they needed something. Let's see. Actually, This whole PowerPoint is over her. For the most part. So it's about 60 million people died in the Black Plague compared to none of their notes. Interesting. Okay. Sorry. These are some of my notes from when I was in school. Okay. So she also opened her to nursing schools. Okay, listeners, within 6 months, the death rate dropped from 60% to 2%
Oh my gosh.
because of the things that she instated in those hospitals. From 60% of the people who came into those hospitals from the war were dying down to 2%. And so she became really famous because all the soldiers really spoke over. The reason that this picture is on here is because they actually called her the lady with the lamp. I guess because she would go out at night to check on everybody. She really enforced nutrition and hygiene, and then just caring for them. You know, making sure that they got food when they needed it, and they got, if they called and needed a nurse, they had a way to reach one. So she did some writing and founded a nursing school. So anyway, it's really pretty interesting. Trying to see if I have anything else written in here. Anyway, that's from nursing school. Where those notes came from. Okay, Louis Pasteur, what does that word make you think of? His name? Pasteurization. Pasteurization. And he's the one who came up with it. So he's known as the father of microbiology. What would microbiology mean, do you think? Yeah. Ology. Anytime you see ology at the beginning of a word, that means the study of. Micro means what do you think?
Little.
Small. And bio means life. So the study of small life is the literal meaning of that term. Study of small life. So that's what it is. Study of microorganisms or small living things that cause disease. It says his germ theory proved that microorganisms cause disease. So he proved that he could be used to destroy germs through pasteurization. We know all of our milk is pasteurized, juice, the things that we drink, all of those are, there's kind of like a lot more detailed process, but basically like boiled for a certain period of time so that, all of those germs can be killed. He also created a vaccine for rabies in 1885 and then founded the basic rules for sterilization. So very significant. Okay, again, think of all of the surgeries that people have been doing. And here he starts sterilization. Joseph Lister, another one involved in sterilizing. He was the first one to use an antiseptic during surgery. Okay, look at the date. This is like late 19th century, so late 1800s. This is the first that people have actually used an antiseptic during surgery.
That wasn't that long ago, really.
No. 150 years. So up till now, they've been doing all these surgeries with no sterilization process for the tools, no antiseptics during the surgery. It's crazy. It's no wonder that every single person didn't die of infection. I don't know. But you think about it, no one would have wanted to have had surgery because the risk of infection and death afterwards would have been crazy. Clara Barton was a volunteer nurse for wounded soldiers during the Civil War. She actually established like a Bureau of Records to search for missing men. So she's the one who came up with that. So let's, just to recognize the people who were missing and try to find them. Campaign for the U.S. to sign the Treaty of Geneva, which would provide relief for the sick and wounded soldiers regardless of what side they were on. And then formed the American Red Cross. That's a very significant thing that she did. Red Cross is still going strong today and is used all the time. So served as its first president. Robert Koch developed the culture plate method to identify pathogens. Any ideas what that would be? You know how in a petri dish, you know what a petri dish is? So the way that you grow bacteria, like let's say you go and they do what's called a urine culture. Anybody ever heard of that? Like a blood culture? All they do in those is it's a lab that you get, and let's say you're doing a urine culture. So they get urine, they actually dip it like with the cotton swab, and they'll swap it on that petri dish. You swap it this way, then you turn your petri dish around and swap it again the other way. And then they put it in an incubator for 48 hours. And then they get it back out. And if there's any kind of growth on there, then they'll get it, put it on a microscope and see what kind of growth it is. If there's any kind of bacteria growth is what I mean. It should come back and there shouldn't be any growth because urine is sterile when it leaves the body. So if there's something on there, they know that there's some kind of infection going on. Kind of interesting. So we came up with this way to figure out to grow bacteria. And then he isolated the bacteria that actually causes tuberculosis. William Ryan, did y'all watch his thing on the video about the x-ray and his wife? What did his wife say? Remember?
That she's seen her death.
Yeah, she'd seen her own death, right? Because she could see the bones in her hand. That would be really creepy if you've never seen an x-ray before and you put your hand under something and then you look at it and you can see the bones. It'd be kind of like ghostly seeing. So x-rays, why was it called x-ray?
Because it was the unknown.
Yeah, because it was unknown, remember? So it says, let doctors see the inside of the body, and he x-rayed his wife's hand. Interesting.
What is that? Okay, what is that little knot on her finger?
Probably.
Why would it be that far
Probably.
down?
Oh, maybe she had. Well, it wouldn't. Look, this from here down is the hand. Like that's like right
This
there.
is a pure bone right here.
Oh, this is this, and then her first knuckle is right
Yes.
here. Okay,
Yeah.
I was about to
So
say.
you can see, here's that first, this is called the proximal phalange, the middle one, and then the distal one.
Okay. So it wouldn't be that far down.
No, it would have been a normal place. Okay, during the Industrial Revolution, John Snow investigated cholera outbreaks. Cholera is a waterborne disease, and figured out that their sewage was getting into their water source. Never a good thing. All kinds of diseases can come from that. So that those things need to be separated. Joseph Lister again, antiseptics, which we just talked about him, but first doctor to use soap to disinfect instruments and hands during surgery. I can't believe that they weren't doing that before. I mean, can you imagine like going from bed, and he was the one on the video. Is he the one that it talked about like him doing like delivering babies and stuff?
Yeah,
and then
he
not washing his hands between them or whatever. Really disturbing to think about. Okay, 20th century. Says they increased knowledge about the role of blood in the body. ABO blood groups were discovered. You know what that is?
Like
Yeah, that's like your blood type. So they figured out that blood, could not be mixed necessarily. So I'd hate to be the people they figured that out on.
Mm-hmm.
The first time you'd probably be okay if that happened. But the second time, because the first time your body just reacts to it, kind of takes it in, starts building antibodies. But the second time you'd be exposed to that blood type, your body would have antibodies for that, if that makes sense, because it would recognize it as something foreign, just like an illness or something.
So
And it would cause kidney shutdown. I mean, it would cause death.
How do they tell? Like when we go give our blood draw, how do they know what kind of blood we have?
when you look, well,
Aren't you typing when you're a baby and it's on some sort of document?
no, not necessarily. I mean, I don't think they even type it when you're a baby. Do they? I don't know if they typed. Maybe no, I don't think they type it unless they need to. For babies. I can't think, because it takes so much blood to type, to do a typing. But no, what they do is they have these antibodies that they actually mix it with. If you guys take anatomy, we actually do some blood typing. And so you use these like serums and you mix it, like you put your blood down, whatever, and you mix it with all the different serums and it'll clump up. It like coagulates and clumps up if it's the wrong, if it has antibodies for that one. So it's kind of like a trial and error thing. But, and it clumps, I mean, you can see it. It like clumps up and you can see what it would do in the body, which would not be a good thing. So I found out how white blood cells protect against disease. New medications were developed. So insulin, what does insulin do?
Regulating your
Diabetes.
blood
Yes,
sugar.
for diabetes, it regulates your blood sugar, brings it down, okay? People need insulin when either their insulin's not working very well, like it's, either their body doesn't respond to it or maybe they just don't make any, or they don't make enough. Antibiotics were developed to fight infections, so first time for antibiotics to be, think of just in the 20th century, what all was invented. I mean, it's like I said the other day, like my granddad when he was 18, they didn't get electricity in his house until he was 18. He was born in 24. So, and you think about that, and then now, like I said the other day, he's wanting like an iPhone. So, you look at the difference in those things, it's crazy to think about. Probably the most advances for sure were in the 20th century. Vaccines developed new machines. So the dialysis machine. What is a dialysis machine? Y'all know? What is it?
It filters your blood for you, right?
Yes. If your kidneys don't work or you don't have kidneys, they can actually hook you up to this machine and it takes your blood out, filters it like your kidneys would do, and then puts it back in. Now, it's not as efficient as your kidneys would be, but it works. And people can be on it for long periods of time. There's a high risk for infection, but the heart-lung machine, so if they could do surgeries, that involve the heart. That's one of the things that they do with that. They hook your blood up to this machine, and it takes care of what the heart and lungs would normally do for you while they're working on your heart. Isn't that crazy? They can do that. Surgical and diagnostic techniques developed, so organ transplants. Everybody know what a transplant is? They give you a new one. They implanted the first artificial heart. Now, I think I always read up on this every year, but we do have artificial hearts. And they don't last very long at this point. But I think there may be another slide in here on that.
How long is very long? I mean,
I have to look up. I want to say there was somebody who lived like 3 years with one, but I could be making that up. So, yeah, it does talk about that here in a little bit. I don't know these days, Healthcare plans developed were helped to pay for the cost of healthcare because all this new stuff was invented, so healthcare becomes more and more and more expensive. So healthcare plans became important. Medicare and Medicaid were created, which were significant. HMOs provide an alternative to private insurance, so those came about that because they're cheaper and they're a little bit easier to get. And then hospice. You know what hospice is? We talked about that before, right?
It's like here's someone's given at the end of their life.
Yes, at the end of their life. So, oh yeah, that was a payday term, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm.
So Alexander Fleming, right? Very significant discovery. He discovered penicillin. Why is penicillin so significant?
It's a really important antibiotic.
Yes, it is a very important antibiotic. You might know why. penicillin is what's called a broad spectrum antibiotic. Why do you think it's called that?
Because it
Covering
treats
a lot
all
of
different
things.
things.
Yes, it treats many kinds of things. Okay, up to this point, there had been some antibiotics, but they were very specific for very specific microorganisms. And we still use a lot of drugs that are very specific. But penicillin is very, it has like lots of different organisms that it can cover and does well for. So one of the most important discoveries, I think, in the 20th century, for sure. Salk and Sabine, they discovered the polio vaccine. And I think, if I remember reading this correctly, I think they were like working on it separately at the same time. I don't think that they like made it together. I'll check into that, but I feel like that's what I remember. So this was significant as well. Polio was something that was very contagious and really was just like rampant in the U.S. My great granddad actually had polio, and he had it when he was young, so it really stunted his growth. I never knew him. He died long before I was born. But I've seen pictures of him, and you can tell, he was significantly shorter than the other people. And it made a lot of people have problems. It kind of crippled their legs, is usually. And you'll still see people who have polio. Francis Crick and James Watson described the structure of DNA and then how it actually carries genetic information. Everything that makes you work, look like you look, act like you act. Well, maybe there's some other things involved in that too, but that's all contained in your genetic code in your DNA. Very great. They say that if you were, I better not say this because I can't remember, but they say that if you were to stretch out all the DNA in your body, it would go around the world like
That's a lot.
thousands of times. I don't know. Because it's so, like each DNA strand is actually 6 feet long. But you think about your DNA and it curls up to the point that it fits inside one cell. Isn't that crazy? One cell, and it's 6 feet long. So that's how thin it is.
Oh my gosh. That's tiny.
And you got billions of cells in your body. So you think about that. Pretty crazy.
No wonder it goes around.
He built a 3-dimensional model of DNA molecules. Okay, kind of like maybe you can see it there. It's really maybe after that. Anyway, and showed the Nobel Peace Prize. The Nobel Prize. Interesting. Christian Bernard performed the first successful heart transplant in 1968. Jarvik was the creator of the first artificial heart. So look, so in 1982, he put it into this man and lived for 112 days. So what's that, a third of a year, 3 months or so, a little over 3 months. Second one lived for 620 days, so almost 2 years. And I'm not sure, I'll have to look that up now. I still don't think they can survive for it's not like a knee transplant you can have and it's good for 20 or more years, 21st century. So the Netherlands became the first country in the world to legalize euthanasia. Do y'all know what euthanasia is? You know what it is?
It's like laying down.
Yeah, it's kind of, what'd you say?
It's
It's where, permanently. So it's where, it's like assisted suicide. So somebody decides they are so sick that they don't want to live anymore. I guess if it's legal, maybe the doctors can either give them medicine to help them kill themselves or give them medicine to do that. It is illegal here in the U.S. You can't do that. That's what, if y'all have ever heard of, oh my gosh, my mind is just going crazy today. What was his name? Kevorkian? Kevorkian? I've never heard Dr. Kevorkian.
Mm-mm.
I think that's right. I'll look it up in a minute too. Anyways, I'm just looking at my phone, so I'll have to get it. My computer all off. Anyways, he went to prison for doing that
Here?
in the U.S.
It was.
Yeah, not that long ago.
No way. That scares me.
Jack Kevorkian. I'll go by Wikipedia. We'll see. It's probably not right. Oh, I can't even get on Wikipedia.
Are you on the Wi-Fi?
Yeah.
Yep. Uh-huh.
He died in 2011. Jack Kevorkian was a U.S.-based physician who assisted in patient suicide, sparking increased talk on hospice care and the right to die. So, but he went to jail for it because he did that. I don't remember how many counts of
Would that be murder?
that they considered a murder. Yes. Says he would become infamous in 1990 when he assisted the suicide of Janet Adkins, a 45-year-old Alzheimer's patient from Michigan. He was a member of the Hemlock Society, an organization that advocates voluntary euthanasia for terminally ill patients. Before she became ill, that's who she was. I'm sorry. After she was diagnosed with Alzheimer's, she began searching for someone to end her life before the degenerative disease took full effect. She had heard through the media about Kevorkian's invention of a suicide machine and contacted him.
What's a suicide machine?
Oh, it's an IV. He agreed to assist her in a public park inside his Volkswagen van. Kevorkian attached the IV and Adkins administered her own painkiller and then the poison. Within 5 minutes, she died of heart failure. When the news hit media outlets, Kevorkian became a national celebrity and a criminal. So the state of Michigan immediately charged Kevorkian with Adkins' murder. The case was later dismissed because they wouldn't decide on assisted suicide. They suspended his license. He assembled a new machine because they took away his license and he couldn't get the medicine. And he delivered carbon monoxide through a gas mask. So they outlawed it. He was jailed twice. I thought he went to prison.
All he could do was
But he just kept going.
Because he thought he was.
He felt like that was something he felt like was right to do.
but it, like, they wanted to die.
But, well,
How would you
But then again, if you have Alzheimer's, you're kind of.
but she decided beforehand. I don't think it's right. I don't think you should, Anyway, but the Human Genome Project sought to identify all of the genes in the human. I think they have finished that at this point. The role of IT is information technology, which is huge these days. Computers do everything for us. Decreased heart disease. Why is that? Decreased heart disease. Well,
More
yeah,
medicine.
medicine is part of it too. We know that heart disease, we know how to prevent heart disease now, whereas we didn't before. There's probably some increased heart disease too, I would think, but anyway, McDonald's. So, anti-smoking laws, cancer, that CA needs cancer treatments, and then stem cell research. Do y'all know what stem cell research is? Stem cells are like baby cells that are in your body. You have some in your bone marrow, and you have them when you're, you have some in your umbilical cord. You have actually have stem cells in your bone marrow as well. And then like embryos have stem cells. Stem cells are just baby cells that haven't decided what they want to be yet when they grow up. And so the research is that they try to do is that they take these stem cells and then they try to try to make them into the things that they need them to be, like try to make them grow into a liver or grow into nervous tissue or whatever.
That's cool.
Obviously, we don't have a cure for AIDS. That's really misworded, but we do have treatment for AIDS that keeps it from getting worse. cancer, heart disease. Oh, I'm sorry, potential. That's why I'm like, why did I write all these things? Potential for 21st century. So hopefully we'll get all of those. Genetic manipulation to prevent inherited disease. I don't hope that we do that. Hold on, let me finish. I don't hope that we do that, but I do think that's coming. Regeneration, antibiotics that don't resist, and then hopefully our lifespan will get much farther. Ben Carson, sit down. If you'll give me 2 seconds, I'd already be done. Ben Carson, we're gonna watch a movie on him later on in the year. Anyways, very significant neurosurgeon that has, he's still alive and still going strong. Anyways, we'll read his story later. Okay, you guys.